Alan Karpick, in the midst of a legend here in Don Fisher, voice of Indiana basketball, voice of Indiana sports, really. It's going dating back to 1973, and he'll be in Mackey Arena when the Hoosiers come calling on the Boilermakers Friday night, 8 o'clock. In a game that is very important to both teams. And Don, first, thanks for taking the time. And never a dull moment in the Big Ten, especially when it comes to Purdue and Indiana.
No, there's not. But honestly, there's never really a dull moment in the Big Ten these days. I mean, look at the upsets that are going on. Last night, I was stunned by Ohio State's win over Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That was amazing in that sense. And this happens all over the league. I mean, we beat Wisconsin, but Wisconsin's beat both Michigan and Illinois. So you're sitting here going, "What's going on?" This league is just that tough.
Yeah. And of course, Purdue didn't fare as well in a very tough game against Michigan. Michigan's really, really good. That's an understatement of the year. Yeah. I think it's their heads and shoulders up. Their heads above. I think Illinois is really maybe 1B or at least 2. But how have you assessed, the upper echelon of the league? And of course, Indiana beat Purdue back in January, and the Hoosiers know how to get that done. But it is a good league, a very good league, and Michigan has really been staunch. What's been your impressions of the upper level of the league so far?
Well, I think like everybody else in this league, you just take there's like maybe four teams right now that are in the hunt for a Big Ten championship. Obviously, Purdue being one of those. Nebraska is certainly another team that you could talk about, but they've had their problems here of late a little bit, and then there's a bunch of us that are kind of right up there in the middle part of the league. Just about everybody else except for maybe four teams, I think. So when you look at it, an 18-team league, how many teams are going to be taken in the NCAA tournament? That's the big question mark, because when you've got an 18-team league, you've got lots of things to take care of there from a win-loss standpoint. And let's face it, that's the most important part of basketball right now is the win-loss record. Can you get into the NCAA tournament? And I know there's all kinds of people speculating on where your seed is and all those kinds of things, or even if you're in.
Yeah.
But I've never really looked at that. I don't think it's worth looking at this point because it's all speculation. And until you get those, maybe up to the last week of the Big Ten season, you're really not going to know how many chances are there going to be for different teams throughout the league.
And one of the most dangerous things is to look at things on paper, as we know. Indiana's obviously got to go to Purdue on Friday night, and then they host Northwestern. They host Michigan State and Minnesota, I think, before going to Ohio State.
Right.
You got a chance to make some statements. Indiana, one would presume, will be an underdog in Friday night's game against Purdue.
Correct.
But this is a chance. Indiana has a schedule that appears to be relatively manageable. If you call a road game at Ohio State and a home game against Michigan State manageable, I mean, how do you view that as what the Hoosiers need to do to continue to bolster that resume?
Well, my feeling is you've got to win 20 games or you're not going to get in no matter what. And then on top of that, I think maybe you need 21 and maybe even 22, especially with an 18-team league and that middle bunch that it could be anybody getting in there out of that group. So right now you've got to take care of business, and you might be able here in the last 5 ball games to maybe get away with 3 wins and get lucky. But if you get 4, I think you've got a very good chance of getting the NCAA tournament. And if you don't get at least 3, I don't think you've got any chance whatsoever at this point.
Yeah, it is, like you said, so competitive, and everybody is a bracketologist, and you can read any varied number of opinions. And you're right, it doesn't really come into play until you get to the last week of the regular season, Big Ten tournament time, which, again, teams can also help their resumes. All right, tell us what's changed, or what Indiana obviously had a couple huge wins after the Purdue game, beating UCLA in overtime and beating Wisconsin in a crazy finish to that game. But if for Purdue fans or those coming to Mackey Arena on Friday night, what's been different? What do you expect from the Hoosiers coming into will be an unfriendly situation in West Lafayette?
Well, there's no question it's going to be a test. It's going to be tough. I think the one thing about Indiana, they went through a streak there. They lost 4 games in a row back about a month and a half ago, and those 4 games really hurt. And the team didn't look very good at that point. They weren't playing their best basketball. Team-wise, they not that they were disjointed in the sense of not playing together, but they just didn't have the execution going like they have over the last 7 ball games now. And they've lost 2 of those, but they've won 5 of those. And so they've gotten back on track. And the West Coast trip, I thought they were capable of winning both those games out there. They beat UCLA in double overtime. They didn't look as sharp against USC, and they got beat in that contest. Then they come back home and they whip a Wisconsin team that has always been a struggle for Indiana. As everybody knows, Indiana hadn't beaten Wisconsin at Wisconsin since 1998, for goodness sakes. Yeah. And all of a sudden, they've beaten Wisconsin a couple of times here at home. They still haven't managed that one on the road, but they don't play them on the road so far this year, and unless they play them in the Big Ten tournament. So that's the good news there. I think this team right now is still dealing with what their limitations are. And what their limitations are basically are size and the same kind of physicality that some of these other teams possess. So at this juncture, when they get into a ball game against a team like Purdue or Illinois or Michigan, Michigan State, those are the kinds of teams that they struggle with because they don't match up very well. But the one thing that they do is they play hard. And they played hard in every single game you watch. That's the one thing I think has endeared this team to the Indiana faithful, so to speak, is how hard they play, how hard they go at it at the defensive end. And, of course, they've changed their lineup a little bit, too. They've inserted Nick Dorn in the starting lineup, who gives them a third scorer from outside, which is critical, especially for this team that needs to make threes and is able to spread the floor with those guys out there. And then the one guy that has really played, there are actually a couple of guys that have really played terrific basketball that have kind of helped this team a lot in this segment. And that's been Connor Enright, who's just been terrific at that one guard spot. And then the other guy is Sam Alexis, who's kind of asserted himself over the last couple of weeks as the post player that has been a little bit more dominant than what Reed Bailey was. So, the fact that they've got a guy like Lamar Wilkerson, who I think is every bit should be considered for Big Ten Player of the Year. I know Braden Smith has certainly always been the favorite in that regard, and I don't blame anybody for voting for Braden Smith because he's tremendous. But I don't think there's anybody that's probably been a bigger factor for a ball club this year than what Lamar Wilkerson has been for Indiana. The guy's averaging 24 points a game in Big Ten play. And 21 on the season. I mean, he's just had a great year. And so he has been the constant for Indiana so far this season. Tucker DeVries, of course, started out pretty hot with the shooting and all that kind of thing, and he kind of cooled off mid-season. Hasn't really gotten back to that same level. But what he does on the floor for Indiana is hugely important. He's that glue guy, the guy that coaches as a coach's son, and he's a coach on the floor for the team. He makes a lot of things happen out there with his rebounding, with his ability to distribute the basketball when he's not shooting it, and one of those guys that's very cerebral and really knows and understands the game. So I think this is still a very good basketball team, again, with limitations, but a ball club that can knock anybody off in a given night if they play their best basketball.
Yeah, and Tucker's dad, Darren DeVries, has been obviously the new guy comes in, has to assemble a team, which he's done an excellent job with that, and making the Hoosiers very, very competitive from that standpoint. But talk about that relationship and what he's been like, Darren, in terms of a new sheriff in town, a new regime. Indiana plays a little differently than it's played in the past, but what's he been like, not only to work with, but what do you watch in terms of his strengths as a head basketball coach in the Big Ten?
Well, I think and this is Al. I'm going to tell you something that dates back to the day he was put on the stand to talk to the fan base and to the news press conference when he was announced as the new coach. The things that he said in that press conference reminded me very much of what I heard from Curt Cignetti at the very beginning of Curt Cignetti's career here, which tells you a little bit about who they were looking for from a basketball perspective side. I'm talking about the administration now, because they wanted somebody that kind of understood what Curt Cignetti was all about and how he went about his business. And I think Darren does a really good job of saying a lot of the same things, maybe not the same way that Sig says them, but nevertheless, I think he does a really good job of understanding what he's looking for. He knows how to build a roster. He did it at West Virginia last year. Obviously, he did it this year. And the way things have turned out, we've got a very competitive basketball team, again, with some limitations. But you can only get so much out of the portal, and when you're recruiting an entirely new roster. So in Indiana, I think is one of those teams that was able to get some very positive stuff out of the new guys that came on the floor and became a part of this program. So in that context, I think Darren's been great. I think his style of play is very much like Indiana fans want to see. They want to see great defense and hustling defense. They want to see the ball spread around, unselfishness, and they want to see a ball club that can make threes, which we hadn't seen for about 8 to 10 years here in Indiana. I mean, we just haven't been a very good three-point shooting team over this last 8 to 10 seasons. So, and that finally has changed. It hasn't changed in the sense of this ball club, having the limitations that they do have. And without question, they're a team that can be beat, but they also could beat you if they play at their best. And that's the one thing right now I think Darren's trying to get these guys to understand. We're capable of winning every game we have left on the schedule, but you've got to perform and you've got to execute the offense and the defense at both ends.
All right. The segue to you have to ask a question about your experience. I think probably even from the Purdue perspective, the people that know you and know of your wonderful career were the happiest for you to have the football experience and that guy named Curt Cignetti coming into your life here over the last 2 years. Yes, I know Purdue fans were I'm sure were conflicted in the game against Miami, but you can't minimize that. That glow for you as a broadcaster, I'm sure it never goes away, but what an experience that was. And looking back now, almost a month later or close to it, how do you put it in perspective?
Well, I still have all kinds of people coming up to me and saying, "Can you believe what we did in football?"
Yeah.
And I mean, it's amazing how many people are still basking in the glory of a national championship on the football field that I don't think 99% of Indiana fans would have thought in their lifetimes that they ever see that. And without doubt, they have now experienced it. Everybody is so hungry from a football standpoint now. And just from a Curt Cignetti perspective alone, this guy is a tremendous football coach. And I say that with all reverence because I've seen what he's done for the last 2 seasons now. You don't do that unless you know what you're doing and you know how to do it. And his process has been fabulous. Everything that he says he's going to do, they have done. And obviously, to keep that up, it's going to have to continue. And I think it will, because I think that's how good this guy really is. And the transfer portal has opened up in a big way for Indiana now, as has high school recruiting. I mean, we were at 6th tier type of football program in getting players to come to Indiana. And I mean, unless you were a 5-star or a 1, 2, or 3-star type player, and I don't believe in stars any more than Curt Cignetti does, because I know he doesn't believe in that. But when you talk about us as media people and the fact that that's how the ratings come out, and so you look at your roster and you go, well, that's a 4 or 5-star guy. We didn't have that many on this year's team. When you think about it, I mean, most of these guys were 3-star guys and guys that developed since they've come on campus here. And that's just an amazing feat in itself. And it testifies to how good this coaching staff really is under Curt Cignetti. And he vets everybody. He vets everybody that comes in through the door from the football standpoint. And if they don't fit the criteria, see ya. You're not going to be around.
You look at the wonderful world of college athletics, and Indiana hit it on the screws in terms of making that transformation, getting the right guy without question, getting the right players. That he brought some of them, but you guys developed Indiana developed a terrific roster this past year. How do you see? You've been watching this for a long time. Do you know in terms of how does stability come to this world, or is this this is the new normal for now? But is this sustainable in your view? Or if you were the commissioner, how do you make this work for everybody down the road?
I think, well, first of all, you can't put toothpaste back in the tube, and that's what we've done with college athletics, with NIL and now the revenue sharing and all those kinds of things. So it's a different world we live in. And I'm an old man in regard to being around here for a long time. And I don't know how it all fits together at this point. I just know that we have a football coach that knows how to do it and has done it in dramatic fashion here. And I think our basketball coach is trying to do the exact same thing. It's probably not going to happen as quickly on the basketball floor. Obviously, this team, if it makes the NCAA tournament, that's what everybody at IU is hoping for this season. If they don't make it, it's not going to be the end of the world, because I do think that they've got some recruits coming in that are going to be really helpful. And then, of course, they'll go to the transfer portal to fill in the blanks, so to speak, in regard to what they actually need. And I thought that DeVries did a great job, like I said earlier, in building that roster from the very beginning and getting most of what he would like to have had on his ball club. But he's still got some holes to fill, and that's going to be a big factor if he can get that done for next season.
All right. We won exciting thing in the world of broadcasting is it's an award that Don has won 28 times, but like I said, who's counting? That's, of course, the Indiana Sportscaster of the Year. Rob Blackman gets named to that for 2025, and you've had a chance to work for years with Larry Clisby, and that legacy lives on. And you guys, I know, we're close from that standpoint, but and I think that Rob's award Rob would be one of the ones that would be first to give plaudits to Larry Clisby and all the broadcasters he's run across. But talk about the significance of Rob's award and also the legacy of Larry Clisby, because they're both important in the big picture of Big Ten broadcasting.
Well, first of all, I know Rob worked with Larry for a long time too, and I know that those two guys were pretty close. And Rob is a terrific broadcaster, very much a pro, very professional, and does a great job on the air. And I've really enjoyed listening to him when I've had the opportunities. I've known Rob for a lot longer time than maybe not as long as I knew Larry, but definitely he's worked with him for a long time. And just a great broadcaster. And he's one of those people, not just on the air, but he's one of those guys off the air that you could really relate to, because he's just a great person. Larry Clisby, one of the funniest people I've ever been around without actually trying to be funny. Because Larry was one of those guys that had a unique lifestyle, so to speak. I mean, he was mowing lawns while he was being a play-by-play broadcaster for the Purdue Boilermakers back in the day. And, of course, I know he got himself in a little trouble 2 or 3 times, and the coaches saved him, and good for them, because Larry's a terrific broadcaster, and we all miss him. He's one of those guys that obviously developed cancer and didn't get it beaten, but he was hanging in there for a long time, dealing with it. And all the people at Purdue I know loved Larry Clisby. He was a great broadcaster and a guy that I revered as well as a friend.
Don, well said, and we look forward to seeing you in Mackey Arena on Friday night. We thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Nobody has seen more than you in terms of the world of Big Ten basketball and all your accomplishments over the years, and the fact that you also know it when you see it, when you can celebrate guys like Rob Blackman, obviously, and Larry Clisby, and we appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you, Alan. I appreciate your having me as always, and we look forward to Friday night. It'll be a fun game.
All right, Don, thanks again. I want to thank the good folks at WLFI for another edition of Gold and Black Live. And we appreciate not only TJ, but Chris and Steve for making this happen. I want to thank our guests too, of course, Chris Kramer, Rob Blackman, and Don Fisher for a lot of Purdue, Indiana basketball talk. We appreciate them. And we'll be back next week for another exciting show on Gold and Black Live on the 27th of February. Pete Rush, a local grew up in Lafayette, became a kind of a nationally renowned attorney that will talk about some of the challenges with eligibility, NIL, all those topics that are near and dear to college sports these days. We'll look forward to a lengthy conversation with Pete next week. So have a great rest of your Friday, and thanks again for taking the time to join us on Gold and Black Live.